Whoa! Look at this problem. This is overwhelming. This looks very, very, very difficult, right? Well, I've got news. The process of solving this problem and the process of solving problems in one's life, personal problems, life problems, surprisingly is not that different. This process is well known, well documented, and used by many people. It is popularly known as the scientific method of inquiry, the scientific approach to problem solving, scientific whatnot. It's a process that researchers, scientists, academics use all the time. This is the last time you're going to hear me refer to this process using the word science, because that does not give it justice. I don't want to use that word from now on. The process is solving a problem for which there is no readily available solution. How do you do that? Well, life's problems, like these problems, like the problem, the solution to this problem, is one type of that problem. This solution is not readily available. In fact, it's overwhelming, as is many of life's problems. But the process of solving them, pretty similar. So I'm going to speak of that. I'm going to use this example and use an example that I'm currently doing in my life that is scientific related to show how similar they are. And then see if I can somehow extend it to a life problem. We'll see though. I don't know about that part. So right here, how do you solve this problem? How do you solve, say, the example of the problem that I'm trying to solve right now scientifically is that of language learning. I'm trying to solve the problem of why babies are able to learn language despite receiving no formal training. And then in an extension of solving this, I'm hoping to understand better why adults have such a difficult time learning language. So, the process. Step one is you need to gather as much information as you possibly can about the topic. So in this case, we need to gather as much information we can about this environment, which is these blocks, these purple, pink, and then these caterpillar-looking blocks, right? In the case of my scientific problem, we need to gather as much information as we can about babies and language learning. The more information we get, the better, the more encompassing and inclusive perspective we get of the problem, which then allows for a better step two. Another problem with this, though, is it can get kind of overwhelming, especially in life's problems. The more information you gather, the more difficult it is to manage all this information. And that's where step two becomes really, really important. And that's where step two in this process, I don't think, is fully understood, especially when considering it in like a puzzle game or life environment. So first, we got to get as much information as we can about this. So with this particular environment, I know that puzzle games are by nature set up, at least if they're designed correctly or well, they're set up to give you all the information you need from in a process. So by the time you get to that overwhelming one I just showed you, you understand all the information you need to understand. All that you need to understand right now is a puzzle is solved when two colored blocks touch. So you learn that here. Like colored blocks. So when you have more than one color. No, that's all light colored. Where's a I could just assume you'll understand, but I'm not going to. Okay, I have two colors here. So you need to get these ones touching. And these ones touching. What we notice here is this block right here, I can't move. That introduces another piece of information. Some blocks have unique characteristics. So in the case of the puzzle that we're trying to solve, the unique characteristic of that particular block is when you pull one, they all move. Like that. And this block has the ability to have more than one color attached to it. So there we have all the information we need to solve, to potentially solve this problem, which is like colored blocks need to be touching, and these particular, well, that's the most important. And then also unique characteristics of particular blocks. In this case, these caterpillars, they all move. They move like this, and they have more than one color block. So there we go. In the case of my problem with life, with my scientific problem, what do we know about babies and learning? Well, what I know about babies and learning language is that they learn language first by babbling the sounds of the language that they will eventually speak. So just they first speak just the sounds, then they combine these sounds to speak words that are understood by their environment, by their parents, by the people around them. And then they combine these words to speak sentences that are understood. So first sounds, then words, then sentences. So there's an increasing degree of complexity. Okay, so I also know that some babies, not babies, babies in general, I know that this process is universal among all babies in the entire world. I know that all babies, when they start speaking their first words across the entire world, they all start saying the categories are all the same amongst all cultures. It's always objects that they often run into, actions that they often run into, and set phrases like pick me up, etc. Things that they use a lot or need to use a lot. Doesn't matter what culture they're from. I also know that there are universal aspects to language. So I know that a baby starts out not knowing any language and therefore has the potential of learning any language, but then they end up learning the language that they hear in the environment that they're born into. So I also know that they are aware of language on a first universal level and then on a local level. And that's we all know that people interested in this also know that the first sounds babies say are sounds that are shared by all languages, and then they start focusing in on sounds that are unique to their local language. And as I just barely said, that the words that they say are words that are shared by all babies, meaning all languages, and then they focus in on organizing these words in a way that is unique to their local language, and you saying words that are unique to their local language. So there's this shift from universal to local. Also, I know that babies upon birth are already react unique to the rhythm of their native language, or the language that they will eventually speak. So there is something going on in the womb of a mother. It's something going on with the baby. Something going on to the baby when it's within the womb. Okay. So remember, this is all the information that I've gathered about the topic of why babies learn language despite receiving no. So about the topics of language, babies, etc., but all with the approach trying to understand an answer to solving the problem of why babies learn language despite receiving no formal training. Okay, so right now we're still in the same level playing field. So I have all the information I need for this puzzle. I have all the information I need for my scientific problem. Now the next step is, this is where we have fun. This is the fun part. This is called developing a hypothesis. Since the solution, no one knows it. In this case, we don't know what the solution, no one knows what the solution to this puzzle is, as well as no one knows what solution to my question is, to my problem. We have to essentially create one, which is a hypothesis. It is a hypothetical answer. Oh, okay, so this is why I think, basically. But it is unique in that it is based off of what we already know. That's the whole point of gathering all this information, is it's based off of what we already know. So in this case, I already know that they all have to be touching light colors, right? So now I have to think of a hypothetical solution. Now this is where it gets a little difficult, because there's so much information here, right? How do you organize it all? It can be overwhelming. In the same case with the baby in language, I just rattle off so much information. How do you organize it all? The only thing that I can think of right now, what has been working for me that is both useful in this context and in the scientific context, is you have to zone in on the unique character, something unique about this environment. The key to the solution lies in what is unique about this environment. I'm not going to say this is always the case, but this is what has been useful to me thus far. So in this case, what is unique about this environment? We instantly know this. It's like our brains are trained to recognize this quickly. It's the caterpillar-looking things. They're the only things here, despite, like, everything here can be moved, but the caterpillars can be moved uniquely. Everything here has color, but the caterpillars have more than one color. So it's instantly known that the caterpillars are the unique things in this environment. Once you've recognized the unique things in the environment, you create a solution, a hypothetical solution, based around those unique things. The advantage of doing this, it takes all the information that you know and adds scope to it, so that you can organize your next approach and not feel too overwhelmed. So you can get to the point of having a next step. If you don't have scope, then your brain is going to automatically try to take in everything, every possible solution, every possible characteristic, everything, and it's not designed to do that well, so it gets overwhelmed and then you stop. You fall asleep, or you get frustrated, or whatever reaction you have when you get overwhelmed. This, focusing exclusively on the unique thing and then trying to make everything fit around that, allows you to think, basically, and take the next step. So in this case, since these caterpillars are the unique thing, my hypothetical solution is going to be based around them, and my hypothetical solution is going to be, I am going to get the caterpillars to be shaped so that I notice that the caterpillars have purple in the middle and pink on the ends. If I can, since they move freely like this, if I can get the caterpillars to get them into a U shape so that one end of the caterpillars is just pink and then the other end is purple, then I can line up all the purples on for example, if the caterpillars are, if their shape is like this, for this one right here, purple's on top, pink's on the bottom. If I can get all them in this same shape in the middle of the screen, then I can align all the purples on top and all the pinks on bottom, or the other way around. I can do it this way. The goal, the hypothetical solution is to get the caterpillars in this shape in the middle, then get the purple, or not just then, maybe the process might not be first this, then that. Just the goal, the end goal, the hypothetical end goal is get the caterpillars in this shape and get their corresponding colors on the top and on the bottom. If I can do that, then I may have the solution. So that's hypothetical. I don't know if it's at the actual solution. It could end up not being the solution, but I'm taking what information I have, since I know they need to all be touching, and the caterpillar is unique, are the unique characters in this environment. I'm using that to take my solution. So in the case of the babies, so I know that babies go from a universal to a local. I know that they go to universal in that they start the world with a blank slate, meaning they're all the same. All babies are exactly the same. They're universally the exact same. Intellectually, mindfully, but obviously physically they're different. And then they all end up speaking a local language. My hypothesis would be then, why are babies able to learn language despite receiving any formal training? Because they don't learn language just to learn language. They learn language to belong. So if they're starting universal and ending local, that shows some type of belonging. The unique characteristic of this is that all babies are learning language, right? See, this is a little bit more difficult to think about because it's so much easier for our eyes to recognize the uniqueness of this environment, while the environment that the unique characteristic of the environment that I'm trying to analyze, I don't have visual access to it. So they all move, but these ones move uniquely. They all have color, but these ones have two colors. All babies learn language, but they all end up speaking a different language. So they all learn language, but they all end up speaking a different language. They all go through the same process of going from universal to local, but then they all end up speaking a different language. So the uniqueness of this environment, the unique characteristics that I'm going to draw upon to form my hypothesis, is that they all start the same, but end up different. What is unique about each baby? Not the baby, but the environment. So the unique characteristics of babies and language is not the babies, the environment. So the hypothesis would then have to be, to make sense, focusing on this unique characteristic, is that babies learn language to belong. And there is no formal training to belong. So in other words, babies don't learn language to learn language. They learn language to belong, which is why they do it despite receiving no formal training, because there is no formal training to belonging. No one receives formal training to belong at the level of baby. It happens as an instinct. So my hypothesis is that babies learn language to belong. I am basing the hypothesis on the unique characteristic that all babies start out the same but end up speaking differently. So the unique characteristic is the baby's environment, not the baby's. Okay. Next step. Now that we have a hypothesis, right? Get these caterpillar creatures all in the same shape in the middle of the screen. Get all light colors on the top, all bottom colors on the bottom. If we do that, then hypothetically we should have the solution to the problem. In the same sense, babies learn language to belong. If that is true, then we have the solution to my question, why are babies able to learn language despite receiving no formal training? The next step is to test it, called hypothesis testing. Here is where it's supposed to be really, really fun, because here is where you play. You play with your environment with the goal of testing your environment. Testing your hypothesis. In this case, I'm testing, the way you play with this environment is you just move stuff around. That's how you play with this. That's a unique characteristic of this environment. It's just moving stuff around. You basically move this around with the overall goal of your head being, I want to get these guys in these shapes, these U shapes. I want to get the purples on tops and the pinks on bottom in this case. And you just move things around. You just keep doing this, slowly trying to get purples on top, pinks on bottom. Once you played with it long enough and you get it to the point where you feel like where it has been tested, where the purples are on top and the pinks are on bottom, and these are all in that shape, then you will know if your hypothesis is correct. In this case, it is correct. That was the correct solution. I have the pinks on top, purples on bottom, and all those things are in that unique U shape in the middle. That happened to be the correct solution. They're all touching, done, problem solved. For the scientific method, hypothesis testing is a lot more complex, especially when it involves humans, because you can't really play with humans in the same way that you can play with these things. You can play with them, but it's not. You have to jump through a lot more hoops. It's called. There's a special name for it. It's called being a human, having humanity. So, to test hypotheses involving scientific questions, you need special permissions, and you need special. You need to do research. You need to do. You need to develop plans. You need to receive permissions from individuals that have stakes in either the lives of the humans or the lives of the data gathered, and it is not as easy. But despite it not being as easy, it does not make it any less the same as what I'm doing here, which is what I'm currently doing. I'm trying to figure out how to test my hypothesis that language is babies learn language despite receiving no formal training because what they desire is to belong, not to learn language, and there is no formal training with belonging. It happens on a level of instinct, like the heart beating, etc., from the perspective of a baby. Belonging becomes a bit more complicated as we get older, but that's a different thing. It's not different, but that's not applicable to my particular problem. How do I test that? I have to play, basically, in the same sense that I played here by moving these blocks around. I have to play with ways of testing it. Think of ways that people would be okay with. Think of ways that would gather the appropriate type of data, remain valid, reliable data, valid data, be respected and be tested, testable, measurable data, and also fall in line with societal and human norms. Don't know that yet. I haven't had enough time to play with it. There is a level of authority that I may need, so it also needs to fall in line with what I am capable of doing. So there's many things to consider, but it's all playing. Okay, so first step. Gather as much information as you can. In the world of science, this is called a literary review. So gather as much information as you can about the topic. Second step. What was it? Hypothesize. Okay? Create a hypothetical answer to your question. Substep of this, to create a proper hypothesis. Locate what is unique. Locate what focus. So to abstain from, to avoid being too overwhelmed, but because there's so much information, focus on what is unique and design a hypothesis around that. therein lies a higher possibility of that hypothesis being tested to be true, which leads to the third step: test the hypothesis, which is based around playing. Whatever constitutes playing in the unique environment that the problem exists, play. Now, how does this apply to real life problems? Well, the only type of life problems I can think of, I'm certain there are lots, but the only type of life problems I can think of that have no readily available answers. You cannot seek some expert. Are problems, personal problems. That's really it. That's all I can think of. Personal problems. There are many different types of personal problems. The one of interest to me is problems of identity and belonging. So you are born in one location. You are raised with one mentality, with one set of morals, yet you don't fit in. Okay? For whatever reasons, that your upbringing is not where you feel comfortable. Or you have never felt comfortable your entire life. You have never felt like you belonged anywhere. How do you belong in these circumstances? Where do you belong? How do you solve this problem of belonging somewhere? So step 1, gather as much information as you can that is relevant to the topics of belonging. Well, since this is a personal problem, relevant information is, you're the only one that really has access to it. It's you. You need to think, well, where do I want to belong? So you have to have some idea of where you would like to belong. Or maybe, is that the hypothetical part? Is that the hypothesis part, right? That might be the hypothesis part, actually. Like, where? It's all... Because hypothesis is hypothetical, and hypothetical is not in reality right now. So using words like "where would I like to belong" is akin to that. You're hypothesizing of a location that you think you would enjoy. Okay, so where would I like to belong? That's the next step. So gather as much information as you can about belonging. So it's about belonging and about yourself that you already know. So gather as much information about yourself that you already know. Yeah, that's something immediately understood in real time. There's people that know you. You have parents, you have siblings, you have friends, you have teachers, you have co-workers. You are able to gather stuff about yourself. Okay? That can be contestable and understood by people outside of yourself. That's another thing. These rules, what I know about this puzzle is not something I didn't create it. It's just the way it is. Same thing with the baby stuff. All that stuff I said about the baby in this stage wasn't something I created. It's understood by everyone who has interest in this field. So the field of you, gather what you know about you. Try to gather as much information as you can about yourself that doesn't come from you, comes from other people. That way you know this information is relevant. I don't know why it seems so important for it to be something that is not, that doesn't come only from you, but obviously it is. Because it's what we did to solve this problem and what I'm doing to solve the scientific one. So to solve the problem of the personal problem, gather as much information about yourself as you can, trying as much as you can to keep it as objective as possible, meaning from other people, stuff that's understood generally by everybody who knows you. Then, step 2, develop a hypothesis. That's the would part. So develop a hypothesis of where do you think you would like to belong. Okay? So this is where we focus, since there's a lot of information about yourself, since every single person has a unique perspective of you, you're probably once you finish step 1, you're going to be probably going to be overwhelmed. So you'll need to somehow, to form a hypothesis, you will need to bring scope to the information. And that's where you locate the unique things. So there has to be something unique about everything that everyone's saying. Something that allows you to zone in on and form something based on this. So just as an example, if a lot of people say that you are nice, what is unique about your niceness? Why are you nice? Are you nice under all circumstances? Are there specific circumstances in which you are nicer than usual? So something unique that allows you to focus in on specific information about yourself that will allow you to design a hypothesis, which would take the shape of I would like to belong, and the location where you would like to belong would have something to do with, would be a riff off of this unique characteristic, this uniqueness understood by what everyone's saying about you. So for example, if you are nice to people you don't know more than you are nice to people you do know, then maybe a place where you belong, your hypothetic reality could be, I want to belong in a store or some type of role where I deal with customers, or I deal with clients, or I deal with people that I am not intimately connected with. So maybe I belong in either retail or, I don't know, there's so many different environments where you associate yourself more with people you're not intimately connected with than you are with people you're intimately connected with. So maybe you'd fit in better there. So it seems just this very quick and rash attempt to applying this method of inquiry to personal problem seems to hold up. Now, testing the hypothesis, though, that's where it has to be fun. That's the fun part, right? Because once you come up with your hypothetical reality of where you want to belong, the way you test it is by trying to belong there. You just go for it. That's where it's fun, but also it could be scary, right? You don't know if you really want to belong there. Okay, so I think that's where this video ends, because let's say, for example, back to this puzzle. Let's say my hypothesis was not correct and that wasn't the solution. What do you do then? What do you do when your test fails? Okay, what will I do when I finally am able to test my hypothesis about babies and learning language and it's discover that it's not correct, right? What do you do when you test your hypothesis of where you belong there and you realize you don't want to be there, etc.? What do you do if it fails, right? Let's go back to puzzles. I don't have one right now, but I would say my next video is going to be one in which I have not already solved the puzzle, and I will try to keep it authentic as possible, and I will authentically fail. And what do you do when you fail? So that's probably going to be video 2. That's it. Enjoy your life until video 2.